حبيبنا وشفيعنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله خاتم أنبيائه وسيد أصفيائه فصل اللهم على طب القلوب ودوائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها وروح الأرواح وسر بقائها وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. فأما بعد فأوصي نفسي وإياكم بتقوى الله، فقد قال عز من قائل: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Dear respected brothers and sisters, we start in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most merciful, the most beneficent. We seek refuge in Him alone from the evil within ourselves and the consequences of our evil deeds. Whomever Allah guides will never be led astray, and whoever Allah allows to go astray will never find guidance. We bear witness there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we bear witness that our beloved sallallahu alayhi wasallam is His prophet and messenger. And I remind myself and you to have God consciousness, to have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For He told us, O you those who believe, fear Allah like He should be feared, and do not die except in a state of submission to Him alone. And I remind myself and you to send abundant salutations upon your Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Every time you hear his name, especially on this day of Jumu'ah, you send salutations upon him sallallahu alayhi wasallam, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. You know, as the month of Muharram, as this sanctified month is coming to an end, I wanted to share a message with my brothers and sisters in Islam, inshaAllah ta'ala. And that message is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created certain things with certain sanctity. And this entire design that we live in is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the one that designs and sets who's sanctified and what is not, what is respectful and what is not, and what do we worship. Subhanallah. He said subhanahu wa ta'ala, إن عدة الشهور عند الله 12 شهرا في كتاب الله يوم خلق السماوات والأرض منها 4 حرم ذلك الدين القيم فلا تظلموا فيهن أنفسكم. He said subhanahu wa ta'ala that it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that decreed that there are 12 months ordained in God's book. Subhanallah. On the day when He created the heavens and the earth, 4 of those months which are sanctified by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So do not wrong, do not transgress against yourselves in the entire 12 months. Do not transgress, do not wrong yourself. Subhanallah. You know, if you think about it for a moment, you may ask yourself, why would I want to wrong myself? Why would I transgress against myself? What did myself do to me so I can transgress against it? Why would such an idea even come to mind? Subhanallah. But transgressing against oneself takes many forms. Subhanallah. And we'll share a few bi'idhnillahi ta'ala so that we can avoid it. Half of winning a battle is knowing your enemy. Half of being successful is setting a plan and knowing what you're heading towards, inshaAllah ta'ala. First part of transgressing or wronging yourself is transgressing against yourself spiritually. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the story of Luqman. He said subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيِّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. When Luqman was advising his son, when the wise Luqman was advising his son, he said, "O son, O my beloved son, do not associate any partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not commit shirk. For indeed, associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a great transgression." Subhanallah. So a way that we transgress against ourselves is by not setting the correct moral compass for ourselves and for our future progeny. Subhanallah. I come from a background, from communities I'm used to, is the first advice that we give our kids is, when you grow up, are you going to become a doctor or an engineer? Worst case scenario, you can go to law or business school, but I'm not too happy with you. Subhanallah. But when was the first thing that we advise our kids with is, لا تشرك بالله. Do not associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, it's a great thing, it's a beloved thing to ensure that our kids are successful. But we need to worry about their success in the akhirah before their success in the dunya. We need to set the foundation that for both us and our future progeny is that there's no shirk, is that there's no associating with partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the first transgression that so many of us might commit. Subhanallah. As our scholars of tafsir explain, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا تَظْلِمُوا فِيهِنَّ أَنفُسَكُمْ, do not transgress against yourself. They said the form of transgression is making that which is haram halal and making that which is halal haram. Subhanallah. One of the greatest forms of transgression is trying to change the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we said earlier, these laws are set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was the duty of our fuqaha, our scholars, to go and find the wisdom behind these laws. But the law is set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we don't try to change it. We don't try to change the innate fitrah within ourselves or within those around us, because that was set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Morality and ethics are objectively set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not up to our own whims and desires to decide what is ethical, what is moral, and what is not. Subhanallah. Because if you look around us, that has been changing throughout centuries. Subhanallah. At one moment they deem something ethical, next election it's not ethical. Next generation, next decade, it's not ethical. Next thing, it's a taboo. Subhanallah. But our morality comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's timeless, it's objective. So a way that we wrong ourselves is by trying to change those laws that are set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Making that which is haram halal, making that which is halal haram. Subhanallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that set that fitrah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that told us, إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى. We have created you for man and woman. Subhanallah. This fitrah was set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Regardless what anyone might say, regardless what identification someone might have, they're just going against the fitrah. They're making that which is haram halal. Subhanallah. So the way that we transgress against ourselves is by breaking these laws. Subhanallah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually told us in the next verse in Surah At-Tawbah, إِنَّمَا النَّسِيُّ زِيَادَةٌ فِي الْكُفْرِ يُضِلُّ بِهِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يُحِلُّونَهُ عَامًا وَيُحَرِّمُونَهُ عَامًا. He said, An-Nasi is a concept that they used to have pre-Islamic time. What they would do is, there was no war to happen, there was an agreement that there was no battles to happen during the sanctified months. But if a powerful tribe wanted to go into a war, what they would do is change the sanctity of months. Say, we're in Muharram and it's a sanctified month, but we'll break that sanctity, but we'll replace it with another month. Subhanallah. Changing the laws, the sanctity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set forward. Again, this is nasi. This is a form of kufr. Subhanallah. This is a form of transgression. This is spiritual transgression. And we need to ensure as Muslims that we don't fall into it. Subhanallah. A form of spiritual transgression is forgetting your beloved. Subhanallah. Forgetting who was sent to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a mercy to mankind. One of the greatest forms of transgression. He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the stingy person is the one whom I mentioned in front of him and he does not send salutations upon me. That's a form of transgression. He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the person who will not see me in the day of judgment, subhanallah, is the person who I mentioned in front of him does not send salutations upon me. That is a form of transgression. Subhanallah. He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً, transcribe, inform about me even if it's a single verse. Anyone who does not inform about him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who does not live to his sunnah, who does not try to portray and deliver his sunnah, is a form of transgression. Subhanallah. There are so many forms of transgression. And as believing men and women, as men and women who are rooted in their sharia, who are rooted in Islam, who are rooted in La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, we need to ensure that we do not fall into these transgressions. So first form of transgression, dear respected brothers and sisters, is a spiritual transgression. Second form of transgression is physical form. Subhanallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, وَأَنفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Spend in Allah's cause, spend in the way of Allah, and do not throw yourselves into destruction. Subhanallah. Sometimes we throw our own selves into destruction while not even realizing it. Subhanallah. The beautiful thing about the Sharia, the beautiful thing about this religion, is it came to protect the kulliyat or daruriyat al-khams, the 5 necessities. That if you were to reflect for a moment, you will realize that everyone has these 5 necessities. And everyone, as they're going about their life, they want to ensure that they protect these 5 necessities. And Islam came to uphold these laws and set laws in place that ensure that these 5 necessities are protected. And they are ad-din, wal-nafs, wal-aql, wal-nasab, wal-mal. These 5 necessities is religion, life, intellect, family and lineage, and your wealth. Subhanallah. If you reflect in your own lives of those around you, you will ensure that as we're going about life, One of the things that we try to do is to protect these things, subhanAllah, is that you ensure that you protect your religion, that you protect your Islam, that you hold on tight to it, not putting yourselves in positions where Islam is questioned, or putting yourselves in positions or in communities where you're not able to protect your religion, subhanAllah. So many stories we hear of people living right next to the masjid. The masjid is 5-10 minutes away from them. But because they wanted to live in an upscale neighborhood, they wanted to live and have some sort of life, this dunya life, subhanAllah, they moved 40-50 minutes away from the masjid. And they realized all the barakah just suddenly gone. Why? Because the decision they made at first, they did not put their religion at the core of it, subhanAllah. Yes, it's still 40 minutes, it's still 50 minutes, it's drivable. But as things come up, subhanAllah, as life comes up, as you get more busy, as you have more kids, as you get busy with your career, subhanAllah, that 50-minute drive is going to be impossible. So make every decision, the respected brothers and sisters, with your religion in mind. With your religion, with the religion of your future progeny. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Protect yourself and your families from the hellfire. So every decision that we make, I ask myself, is this a form of protection for myself, for my religion, and the religion of my future progeny? Am I setting up my kids for success, not just life-wise, but also spiritually, that their religion is going to be protected? Do they have resources around them? Do they have scholars around them? Do they have people of Allah around them? Do they have majalis of dhikr around them that they will go back to and fulfill their hearts with the remembrance of Allah and salutations of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Am I ensuring those foundations are in place? Am I spending my wealth? Am I spending my time to ensure that there are structures that protect my religion, that protect my heart and the religion of my future progeny? One of the 5 necessities. Secondly is your life. Are you protecting your life? Not throwing yourself into destruction, into harm's way. Not driving recklessly, subhanAllah, as you pass by others, to not bring harm to others and not bring harm to yourself. It's not just about a matter of getting a ticket or not. It's not just about a matter of getting away with it or not, or getting stopped or not. It's a matter of protecting one of the 5 necessities, protecting life, subhanAllah. Protecting intellect. One of the things that the Sharia came to protect, subhanAllah. So we don't consume anything that goes with our intellect. We don't put ourselves in positions that our intellect is gone, because this is sacred and it was set as sanctified by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fourthly is we protect our family lineage, subhanAllah. It's one of the beautiful things about Sharia. This is why the fitrah was set for us, is that a family is set from a woman and a man, subhanAllah. That's how lineage is protected. Through marriage, subhanAllah. Through names, through your last name, subhanAllah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to only call kids, call progeny by their parents' names, subhanAllah, not to attribute them to anyone else. One of the beautiful things about the Sharia. And lastly is to protect wealth. One of the 5 necessities, one of the 5 ways that we don't transgress against ourselves and transgress against others is by ensuring our wealth is protected. Yes, it seems obvious that as I go through life, I worked so hard for this money, obviously I'm going to protect it. But there are so many ways that we are wasteful of it, subhanAllah, while not even realizing. By living in a community, by living in a culture where overconsumption is just the norm, subhanAllah. The newest phone that comes out, I need to buy it. The newest trend that is out, I need to be part of it. I just got a release last year, I need to upgrade this year, subhanAllah. And we're constantly wasteful of our wealth because of marketing schemes, because of a culture that deems it necessary for us to constantly overconsume, subhanAllah, with everything. With fashion, people just buying an outfit to wear it for one day and throw it away, subhanAllah. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam, this was not his method. This was not his prophetic way. It was to protect things. Things were so dear to him sallallahu alayhi wasallam that he gave objects that he owned their own names. There was a name for his cup sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He named things as he wore them and made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect them. His camel had a name, subhanAllah. Why? Because he was dear to him. It was not something that was changed every year, subhanAllah. But we live in a culture with overconsumption is the norm. That we're throwing wealth. We're not protecting our 5 necessities, subhanAllah. A way of protecting our wealth is ensuring that it's used for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us, لا تزول قدم عبد آدم يوم القيامة حتى يسأل. That the feet of the son of Adam will not be moved, will not shake on the day of judgment until he's asked a few questions. Subhanallah, so many questions. His life, how did he spend it? His knowledge, how did he utilize it? But one of those questions is, وَعَنْ مَالِهِ مِنْ أَيْنَ اكْتَسَبَهُ وَفِيمَا أَنْفَقَهُ. His wealth, how did he attain it? And how did he spend it? Subhanallah. And both parts of the equation need to be halal for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot say that I attain my wealth through haram, through shady business deals, through selling that which is prohibited, but I donate some of it. It does not work. It's still haram from its source. And likewise, you cannot say it's my own money. I worked so hard for it. I work hard, so I must play hard. I must party a little. It's my own money. It's not. It's money that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed you to inherit for a moment, and He's going to ask you about it. Subhanallah. As Sayyidina Ali karramallahu wajhahu wa radiyallahu anhu used to say, الدنيا حلالها حساب وحرامها عقاب. That this dunya, whatever you attain from halal, you will be questioned about it. And what you attain from haram, it's a guaranteed punishment. Subhanallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect all of us. Your wealth, you need to ensure that you're not transgressing against yourself, not just being wasteful. Subhanallah. Being conscious about the decisions that you make, about the purchases that you make. Subhanallah. You know, if you work in corporate or if you own a business, if you own your own business and you want to file taxes at the end of the year, you might have some business expenses, but you keep receipts because you want to justify it to the IRS. I bought this as a business expense and this is what I needed it for. Subhanallah. We need to treat the way that we spend our wealth, generally speaking, like that in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can I justify such a purpose, such a spending, such a purchase? Is it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Will it help me with my da'wah? It's not just about donation, subhanallah. The ways of khair, the ways of doing something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes beyond building masajid and institutes, although that's a critical part of it. But He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us that whoever leaves his house and is working and exerting effort because he has young children at home that he wants to provide for them from halal, then it is for the sake of Allah. Whoever is going and exerting effort because he has elderly parents at home that he wants to provide for, then it is for the sake of Allah. Whoever is going and putting in efforts because he wants to protect himself through marriage, through ensuring that he's eating halal, then it is for the sake of Allah. The only exception that He sallallahu alayhi wasallam gave you and I, He said sallallahu alayhi wasallam, whoever is exerting effort because he wants to compete with those around him or show off, then it is for the sake of shaitan. So anything that we do in our lives can be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just ensure you're not doing it because you want to compete with someone, because of peer pressure, or because of just this mentality that we need to consume. So do not transgress against yourself spiritually, and do not transgress against yourself physically, either through your wealth, through intellect, through your family lineage. وَقُولُوا قَوْلِي هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ فَاسْتَغْفِرُوهُ فَيَا فَوْزَ الْمُسْتَغْفِرِينَ. الحمد لله وكفى وصلاة وسلاما على عباده الذين اصطفى فأما بعد. As we said, the respected brothers and sisters, one of the learning lessons from this month is that we don't transgress against ourselves. As we said, either spiritually or physically. Another form of transgression that we might see is by transgressing against our brothers and sisters. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He was advising us in Surah Al-Hujurat, He said, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا يَسْخَرْ قَوْمٌ مِّنْ قَوْمٍ عَسَىٰ أَن يَكُونُوا خَيْرًا مِّنْهُمْ وَلَا نِسَاءً مِّن نِّسَاءٍ عَسَىٰ أن يَكُنَّ خَيْرًا مِّنْهُنْ. He said, "O people, do not let the group of men make fun or ridicule other group of men, for they might be better than them. And all people, do not let a group of women ridicule or make fun of another group of women, for they might be better than them." And He said, subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تَلْمِزُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ. And He said, subhanahu wa ta'ala, do not defame one another or call one another with offensive nicknames. But when He subhanahu wa ta'ala made sure and informed us and commanded us not to call one another with offensive names, He did not just say subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't call your brother an offensive name. He said, do not ridicule yourself, subhanallah, because your brother is yourself, subhanallah. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Indeed, the believers are brothers and sisters. So when you're ridiculing, when you're defaming, when you're shaming your brother or sister, it's like you're shaming yourself. Because the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Al-mu'minu mir'atu akhihi, wal-mu'minu akhul mu'min." He said that the believing men and women are mirrors to each other. Subhanallah. And the believing men and women are brothers and sisters to each other. Subhanallah. If you're defaming your brother. If you're calling him a nickname that he does not like or she does not like, it's like you're looking in the mirror and cursing at yourself and defaming yourself. Who would want to do that? This is the message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us, Al-mu'minu mir'atu akhi, the believing brothers and sisters are a mirror for each other. And that's why, as this form of being a mirror to each other, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the companions, Unsur akhaka zaliman aw mazluma. Make sure that you assist your brother or your sister, whether they're transgressing or they're being transgressed against. Subhanallah. The companion said, I know how to support my brother or my sister when they're being transgressed against, but how do I give them support when they're transgressing against each other? He said, by ensuring you stop them, by advising them and not letting them transgress against others. Subhanallah. You see your brother about to commit a sin, your brother about to fall short, your sister about to defame someone else, you stop them. You give him nasiha in a way that is beloved to Allah and His Messenger. This is a way of ensuring that they do not transgress against themselves. This is a way that you're ensuring you're not transgressing against yourselves as well, subhanallah, by protecting those around you. Subhanallah. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, إياكم والظن فإن الظن أكذب الحديث ولا تحسسوا ولا تجسسوا ولا تنافسوا ولا تحاسدوا ولا تباغضوا ولا تدابروا وكونوا عباد الله إخوانا مسلمين كما أمركم. Subhanallah. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam is giving us advice of how to treat each other as believing men and women. To not steal from each other, to not cheat from each other, to not look out for each other's faults, to not spy on each other. Subhanallah. To give each other benefit of the doubt, to not steal business from behind each other. Subhanallah. And this was affirmed in other hadith, that if your brother is in a transaction, you don't go in the middle of it and try to break it just so because there's an advantage to you. Subhanallah. You don't tell your brother, you know what, don't buy from him, I'll sell it to you at a cheaper price. Or don't sell to him or buy it from you at a more expensive price. You don't get in the middle of that transaction. Subhanallah. Why? Because hatred and enmity will become between brothers and sisters. وَلَا تَحَاسَدُوا, and do not envy each other. And do not hold hatred in your heart for each other. Subhanallah. وَلَا تَدَابَرُوا, and do not give your back to each other. You have a right upon your brother and your brother has a right upon you. Subhanallah. وَكُونُوا إِخْوَانًا وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا كَمَا أَمَرَكُمْ. And be in service to Allah. Be servants to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as believing brothers and sisters, just like He commanded you. Subhanallah. Everything that we do it as a community of brothers and sisters. There is no path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where I'm just secluding myself and I go on my own path. Why is there Jumu'ah prayers? It's as a community effort. Why is there mawalid? Subhanallah. And gatherings of dhikr? Because we try to support each other, subhanallah, on this path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so many narrations, subhanallah, and so many advices from the Salaf where they tell us to make sure those around us are there to support us and we support those around us, subhanallah. So don't transgress against your brothers and sisters. Do not harm them. See how can you uplift their calamity, subhanallah. Your brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Sudan, in Bangladesh, in Yemen, subhanallah. Your brothers and sisters locally, those incarcerated without, subhanallah, without justice, without a cause. Those struggling behind bars, those who just accepted Islam behind bars, those who just accepted Islam, how are you supporting them and ensuring that you're not transgressing against them? Subhanallah. If one thing that we learn during this blessed month is the sanctity of the human, subhanallah, the sanctity of the son of Adam, the sanctity of the believer, and you ensure that you don't transgress against yourself spiritually, you don't transgress against yourself physically, and you don't transgress against your brothers and sisters. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us beneficial knowledge, to allow us to benefit from that which we have learned. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to implement it and grant us sincere intention for His sake. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be means of change. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from transgressing against ourselves and transgressing against those who are around us. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinabah. We ask you, Allah, to allow us to see truth as truth and allow us to follow it, and to allow us to see falsehood as falsehood and to remain away from it. اللهم أعط للسائلين منا ما سألوا وللطالبين منا ما طلبوا اللهم اقض حوائجنا وحوائج المسلمين وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وقيم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن